Thomas Roby retired early on that fateful night of April 14th, 1865, because he was tired after a hard day's work. In fact, he was more than tired. Things hadn't gone too well that day. His work had seemed more difficult than usual, and the children were more troublesome than normal. Thomas was extremely depressed that evening. He could think of nothing that would cheer him up. The children had mislaid all of his work tools while playing, and he reprimanded them and ordered them to bed early. Tired as he was, he tossed and turned in his bed. He just couldn't get a wink of sleep. There seemed to be a cloud of premonition over him. His wife, Rose, was glad to get a few minutes' peace and quiet while everyone in her usually chaotic household was still and serene. She sat in a candlelit corner of the parlor, mending some clothing, calmly rocking back and forth in the rocking chair he had made her some years before. Suddenly, Thomas sprang from the bed, horror-stricken, looking about him as though he didn't recognize any familiar surroundings. Rose, never one to get overexcited without just cause, waited patiently for him to speak, continuing meanwhile to stitch calmly on the sock heel she was mending. Finally, he spoke frantically. "My God, Roseanne, President Lincoln was just shot!" he exclaimed. "Now, Thomas," Rose said soothingly, "you've been having a bad dream." "No, Roseanne, I tell you, I was there. I saw it happen. He was mortally wounded." Rose was now impressed. There could be no doubt that he did indeed believe that he'd been through a shattering experience. Thomas, now thoroughly awake and his senses aroused, began to nervously pace the floor. On a sudden impulse, he stopped in front of the mantel clock, took out a pencil, and marked the position of the hands. Also, he noted on it the month and the day in small figures. The news from the east reached Clarksburg by stagecoach some 2 weeks later. It was learned that on the exact day and hour that Thomas had marked on the face of the clock, John Wilkes Booth had indeed fired one shot in the back of the great emancipator, mortally wounding him. The clock was handed down as an heirloom and remained in their family for several generations.